Hi, I'm Jenny Rushmore of Cashmerette, and today I'm going to teach you how to do gathering by showing you how to install the gathered sleeve of the Eustace top. Let's get going. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew 2 lines of gathering stitches. Gathering stitches are straight stitches, long stitch length, and you want to sew both of them within the 1/2 inch seam allowance. You don't backstitch and you want to leave long threads either side, and we're going to sew 1 across the top and then 2 across the top. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to do this on the wrong side to make it clear for you. So I'm starting at this gathering notch. I'm going past the top of the sleeve to this gathering notch. If it's ever so slightly more or less, that's fine. So I'm going to start with long threads here, and I'm going to start by doing the furthest one away from the edge. And I'm actually going to move my needle over as a way to do the 2 lines. So I've just moved my needle that way using my needle adjuster. If you don't have that, you can move the fabric. I have changed to a straight stitch, long stitch length. And I'm just going to sew around. Now, no back stitching, just going to lift the presser foot up, and I'm going to pull this. I might have to do a little bit of a wobble on the hand wheel. Pull this and give myself threads on the other end. So now I have long thread, threads on both ends. Okay, so now I'm going to sew my second line, and I'm going to sew it in the middle between this line and the edge of the fabric. Make sure you don't catch these threads as you're doing it. And I just moved my needle back to the middle, and that will allow me to do that. Just get this out of the way. There we go. Get these ones out of the way. And again, I'm going to lift the presser foot, just pull this off the machine. Sometimes you need to wiggle the hand wheel a little bit, so that's what I was just doing. And there we have our 2 rows of gathering stitches. Okay, so I've done those 2 lines of gathering stitches. So the way that you bunch them up is by pulling on the bobbin thread, which is the underneath. So because I sewed it with this side up to show you, this side is the bobbin thread. And you literally just take it and cinch the fabric along the thread, if you see what I mean. So you're pulling the bobbin out, although I guess really what I'm doing is holding it, and then I'm just rippling the fabric along. And you want to do that evenly. So what I do is I just start by doing it a little bit. Do one, and then do the other, just to get yourself a little start. Now you actually need to look at doing it precisely. So we've roughly done a little bit of gathering, but we actually need to do it precisely. So to do that, I'm identifying, this is the back of the sleeve because there's 2 notches here, and it's important that you get that the right way around. So I'm going to lay out my bodice, my attached front and back, out flat, like this. And I'm going to take my sleeve, and I am going to lay it with the top notch here on the sleeve aligning with the shoulder sleeve. Now I need to make sure I've done it the right way around, and I have not. So there's a double notch here, and on this arm side there's only a single notch because it's the front. So this means I have done it the wrong way around. It's this side. So I'm going to find the center notch on the top of the sleeve, and I'm going to align it with the shoulder seam here, keeping the basting threads out of the way, and I'm just going to pin it there. Now I'm going to find the gathering notch. So that's right at the end of where I gathered, and then I'm going to find the equivalent gathering notch on the sleeve head here. Now, what you can immediately see, the distance from here to here is shorter from the distance from here to here on the sleeve, and that's where the gathering's coming in. We are now going to cinch this up, gather this up, until the distance from this pin to this notch is the same distance from this pin to this notch. So you can do it in half. So we're just going to do this side and then we'll do the other side. So these are the front threads and these are the back threads. So I am just going to hold the back bobbin threads and just cinch the fabric along. And sometimes what it's easiest to do actually is push it as close as you can. So cinch it up as much as you can and then just ease it out. That's actually what I find easiest. So I crunched it all up. So now I'm going to place these two notches together and pin them. And now I'm just going to relax the gathering out until the two lengths match up. And you can play around with this. You want to try and get it as even as you can. So what you don't want is that it's like super bunched up in one area and then not at all in the other. So you want to try and get that even. And you can pull on the threads more. And then you can also spread it apart with your fingers. So I've now got that to be pretty even. So I'm going to add another couple of pins. And when you're adding the pins, you want to try and get the edges of the fabric aligned as much as possible. So it's a little bit hard now because the fabric is all bunched up on the top. But there we go, that's now done. Now I'm just going to repeat the same on the other side. So I'm going to begin, get the bobbin threads separated out there. I'm going to begin by scrunching it up as much as it will go. I'm going to pull it over and match these notches up here. And now I'm going to spread the gathers out so that they are even and the two pieces of fabric are matching each other in length. So actually on this side, I need to pull the bobbin threads even more because it needs to be a little bit shorter than I've made it. Okay. I'm checking if these two edges are equal. I'm going to distribute that a little bit. Now that looks good. Going to pin it. I will say in a printed fabric, you won't notice the evenness of the gathers as much as in a plain fabric. If you're doing a plain fabric, I would encourage you to play around with this until you've got to a point that it's really even. So we've now pinned that part. Now we want to pin the rest of the arm side. These long threads, okay, this is a bit of a tricky one. You don't want to totally lose them yet because if you cut them very, very short, they may come out. But what you can do is certainly trim them back a little bit before you sew because you don't want them getting in everything. So I'm still leaving a couple of inches, but I'm trimming them back a bit. Okay. So now I'm going to sew this in. So I'm going to sew starting at one end all the way around to the other end. Okay, so I'm going to bring this over to the sewing machine. Now the main thing you want to make sure when you're doing this is that you don't have bunched up fabric on the other side. So you want to try and get it as flat as you can. So flat on the back, flat on the front. There's also a lot of pins and you are really going to need to take them out as you sew, because you don't want to sew over pins. It's very dangerous. They can break and go in your eye, or they can go into your machine and break your machine. So it depends. Bad for eyes, bad for machines. As you can see, there is nothing wrong with starting and stopping when you are sewing. And if you have a machine with a speed dial, now is a good time to make it slow so that you can do it very accurately. So I'm getting into the gathers now. Okay, again, keep on adjusting it, keep on making sure the fabric underneath is flat. And the basting stitches should be inside the seam allowance, but even if they're not, you can easily remove them later. Hit a pin, there we go. Okay, so now I have sewn in the sleeve. You can see the gathering here where it's all bunched up. And we have finished the seam allowances as well. So now I'm going to press. So I'm going to use my tailor's ham again underneath because we're pressing curves. Now, because of the gathers, I'm actually going to press the seam allowance away from the sleeve towards the body, which is slightly different just because of these gathers here. And when you press here, you don't want to press in this area, you only want to press in the seam allowance. Now, normal sleeves, so the View B sleeves, you would actually press towards the sleeve. That is more of the standard. But here, we're going to press it away. And as you can see, I'm just very carefully pressing only the seam allowance. So I've done the top there. Now I will go down, and again, using the tailor's ham, just go section by section. So I'm just pulling it flat, so I'm pressing onto a flat surface. And then on these ones, you don't need to worry about only pressing the seam allowance. So pressing there, push it over, press there, and then onto the other side. Press, press. Okay, so that sleeve is now inserted and ready for the next step. For more videos and more tips and tricks when you're learning to sew, check out our website at cashmerette.com/learn to sew. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter that's specifically for beginners. Go to cashmerette.com/learn to sew newsletter.